At midnight, my son took me to the hospital with a fever, and there we ran into my ex-boyfriend from 6 years ago, who looked at me with mocking eyes. A single mother in the hospital? Where's the child's father? Uncle, my mom says my dad passed away. My good son instantly switched into rapid response mode. I get it. At that age, dying is normal. Susana, you must have inherited quite a fortune. He really couldn't say anything nice. I glanced him up and down and nodded in full agreement. Everything you say is true. Chapter 1 as usual. At the end of the month, the editor would surely come pressuring me for my manuscript. This month was no exception. Susana, before the end of the month I need that manuscript, or you won't be paid. He started threatening me early in the morning, and of course he hit my weak spot. Without payment, I had no money to raise my son. Editor, don't worry, I will definitely submit on time. I swear I never miss a deadline. I promised with all sincerity, but even my son, watching TV nearby, couldn't hold back his disdain. Mom, good thing lightning only strikes bad people when they lie, otherwise you'd have been struck countless times already. Even though my son was right, I still had to keep a calm, steady smile. Susana, a romance novelist in the terminal stage of procrastination. Every month, this same end-of-month pressure repeats at home, and for the sake of supporting my son, I launch into a sleepless writing marathon. Eventually, I collapsed from exhaustion and a raging fever. So my son brought me to the hospital in the middle of the night, and that's when we stumbled into my ex, the man I broke up with 6 years ago, who also happens to be my son's father. Luckily, my boy looks just like me, sparing us the melodrama of recognition and a custody battle. Ihsan and I had been college classmates. He was the untouchable flower of the medical school, but just as famous for his biting tongue. Back then, countless beautiful girls threw themselves at him, but all were scared off by his razor-sharp words. Only I dared to step forward, and in the end, I won the handsome man. As for why we broke up, let's just say it's a past not worth revisiting. 6 years later, upon meeting again, Ihsan wasted no time showing off his sarcasm. I agreed with what he said, but his expression still looked as if he had just swallowed poison. The real problem now, though, was my burning fever and the fact that I was nearly at my limit. Doctor, please see me first. If you keep delaying like this, patients are going to die. Maybe my mouth was too accurate, because right after saying that I collapsed on the spot, while my good son quickly jumped aside. Son, your mother only weighs 40 kilos, I won't crush you. Ihsan caught me by the arm, sparing me from kissing the hard hospital floor. Seeing myself in his arms, I quickly spoke first to block his sarcasm. Don't get the wrong idea. I only have a fever and weak legs. I'm not throwing myself into your embrace. Uncle, I can testify my mom didn't throw herself at you. Though my mom does want to find me a handsome stepdad, right now her life matters more. Please treat her quickly. Martin, shut up. Truly you are my good son. If you don't know how to explain, don't explain at all. Your mother is not looking for a stepdad for you. It's my own fault that when I watch dramas I talk too much, saying every day that I want a young man. So, even with your ex's inheritance you're still worried about not finding a handsome guy? Ihsan kept up his venomous sarcasm. Hee. Other than an awkward laugh, I couldn't find any fitting reply. In Ihsan's eyes, besides being vain, I now also bore the reputation of not being able to endure loneliness. But whatever. I won't see him again, anyway. If I ever need to be hospitalized again, I'll definitely avoid this place. Ugh, such a crow's mouth. I swear I won't come back here. Chapter 2, so, what's the situation now? I'm lying in a hospital bed receiving in drip, my son and my ex chatting, and somehow the scene is surprisingly harmonious. Kid, you look pretty good. Incredibly, I heard sarcasm used to compliment someone and it turned out to be my son, who had that special charm. Of course. My mom has good genes. Martin, you really have no humility that you inherited from me. With my genes, my son can't turn out bad, though his father's genes aren't bad either. I snuck a glance at Ihsan, who wore an expression that clearly said, I see you bragging. Instinctively, I slipped into my awkward smile mode. As long as I don't feel awkward, it's someone else who will. He shot me a sidelong look, obviously unwilling to waste words on me, and kept talking with my son. How old are you? That question made my whole body tense. I blurted out in a rush. 4 years old. I spoke so loudly that both of them turned to look at me, and even the patient in the next bed stared. I was so embarrassed, I felt I could dig out a 3-bedroom apartment with my toes. But embarrassment aside, the most important thing was to hide Martin's age. I couldn't let Hassan catch any clues. Unfortunately, despite all my careful calculations, I forgot to account for my good son. Mom, didn't you say we shouldn't lie? I'm not 5 this year? Why did you lie to Uncle? I felt 3 black lines appear across my face. Son, in your past life you must have been a master at ruining things. In this life, your specialty is ruining everything for your mom. Hee hee, if I say I made a mistake, would you believe me? I pretended to be calm, but inside I was a bundle of nerves. With Hassan's genius-level intelligence, would he suspect anything? Do you think I'd believe you? Hassan looked at me with an enigmatic smile that only made me more uneasy. Then, in a sudden slip, I blurted out, "Don't misunderstand. When we broke up, I wasn't pregnant." It hit me then I had the terrible problem of my mouth moving faster than my brain. But Hassan's expression shifted. He no longer looked so intimidating, and I finally let out a sigh of relief. Unfortunately, the very next second that sigh caught in my throat. Of course I wouldn't misunderstand. A vain woman like you, desperate to land a millionaire, could never have been pregnant with my child. His words dripped with sarcasm, striking straight into my chest. Yet I couldn't find a single flaw in them. After all, it was me who had admitted to being vain, me who had joked about wanting to marry a rich man. There was no way to deny it. Looking at him now, standing tall in his white coat, more mature, steady, and even more handsome than before, I couldn't help but drown in memories. Meeting Hassan had been pure coincidence. My classmates and I were heading back to the dorm after class, passing by the library just as a girl was confessing her love to him. He stood with his back to us, but we all heard how ruthlessly he rejected her. The poor girl cried her heart out, and I couldn't bear it. Back then I was young, reckless, with a habit of meddling in things that weren't my business. I thought, if you're going to reject someone, just do it. We use such cruel words? On impulse, I charged forward. My roommate tried desperately to hold me back, but failed. I ran straight up to Hassan, shouting, "Are you still a man, bullying a girl like that?" The very next moment he turned his face toward me, and it felt like I'd stumbled into paradise. This boy was far too handsome. Any thoughts of defending justice vanished instantly. All I could think about was basking in the sight of him. I rejected her confession. "Do you have a problem with that?" Hassan shot me a sidelong glance. I immediately forced a smile and waved my hands frantically. No problem at all. That day, I was just as awkward as I am today. After Hassan left, my roommate explained everything. He was the genius of the medical school, the most handsome boy on campus, the untouchable flower on the highest peak, and infamous for his razor-sharp sarcasm. Many girls had tried confessing, many had been frightened off, but countless more were eager to try. From that day on, I became one of them, determined to climb that lofty peak. Chapter 3. From then on, you could always spot me trailing after Hassan around campus. He went to class, I sat in as an auditor. He studied in the library, I pretended to read. He played basketball, I brought him water. Every day, I found some excuse to be near him. Hassan rejected my confessions again and again, always harshly, but his sarcasm had no effect on me. My skin was far too thick. One time in the library, he asked me seriously, "Susana, what is it you actually like about me?" "I like everything. Everything about you attracts me. No matter what you're like, I like you." Dropping my playful tone, I answered just as seriously. I still remember his reply, "Susana, I have no plans to date in college. Don't waste your time on me." And what did I say then? I said, "Then, Hassan, I'll just wait in line. When you graduate, I'll be the first to date you." Back then, chasing Hassan had been pure passion and courage. Now, I don't think I'd even dare say a word. I stuck by him every single day for a month. Not only did the entire medical school know me, but practically the whole university knew that Susana from the literature department was madly chasing after Hassan, the genius scholar. Even the campus forum started betting on whether I could actually win him, though most mocked me, saying it was impossible. My roommates also tried to talk me out of it. Susana, at least you're the flower of our literature department. Why hang yourself on a single tree? It's necessary. Isan is the tallest, handsomest tree, and I'm willing to hang myself on him. Smiling as I said this, I walked off. That day Isan had an anatomy class, so I bought milk tea and waited for him at the lab entrance. But instead of Isan, his classmate Gabriella arrived, the tutor's daughter. Since chasing Isan, I'd learned a lot about him, and Gabriella's name was always mentioned. Everyone said she was the most suitable for him. Of course, I didn't agree. That flower on the mountain peak was mine. So you're Susana. Do you think making a spectacle of yourself all over campus will make Isan accept you? My advice: give up now. She looked at me with an arrogant air that irritated me deeply. I like him. How I chase him is my choice, and whether I give up or not is also my choice. I don't know if it was because I contradicted her or because my shameless pursuit infuriated her, but she began to lash out. A girl like you doesn't deserve Isan. He's a top student, he'll study abroad, he'll become the best doctor. And you're just a mediocre student who can't even find a job, much less help him in any way. I don't need anyone's help. Just then, Isan appeared with a serious face. He walked up to me, took my hand, and pulled me away. I was so shocked I froze, letting him lead me several steps before I even realized what was happening. Of course, he had acted on his own. I had no reason to stop him. Isan, does this mean you've accepted my proposal? I pressed, hoping for a clear answer. After chasing him for so long, he was still so distant, and my nerves were fraying. Isan calmly replied, I don't hold hands with girls who aren't my girlfriend. That night, I was so excited I couldn't sleep at all. Dating him turned out to be easier than I had imagined. Isan might appear distant, but in truth he treated those close to him very well, even if he never dropped his sarcasm. Every day he came to the entrance of my dorm to bring me breakfast, and when he had no classes, he accompanied me to mine, doing everything a boyfriend should do. We planned to pursue a master's degree abroad together, planned our marriage, and even talked about having children. Those days were the happiest of my life. But in our final year, just before graduation, we broke up, and it was I who suggested it. At the time, Isan was competing for the only spot in the medical faculty to study overseas, and he was so busy it was almost impossible to see him. I supported him wholeheartedly and knew how important that opportunity was for his future. That was when Gabriella found me. Susana, you know Isan's family isn't well off. That spot abroad is his chance to change his life, and my father is his mentor. It's my father who decides who gets it. Then she leaned in, still arrogant but far more certain of herself. If you two keep being together, he'll never get that spot. You know what I mean, don't you? She was certain I would break up with him for the sake of his studies and future. And in the end, I did exactly as she expected. I didn't want Isan to be held back because of me. On the day I broke up with him, I arranged for my father to take me out to dinner and drive me back to school, making sure Isan saw. He asked if it was because he had been too busy to spend time with me, promising that once it was over he would make it up to me. Only God knows how wretched I felt inside, yet I had to pretend I was leaving him for money. Isan, do you see that man? He's rich. If I'm with him, I won't need to work and I'll have more money than I can spend. But what can you give me? If I'm not mistaken, you're still drowning in student loans, aren't you? I've thought it through. I like the life of the wealthy. I saw his fists clench tightly, then slowly release in defeat. He gave me one last look, said nothing, and turned away. For the next 6 years, I never saw him again. After our breakup, I focused on graduating and heard no news of him. 2 months later, I fainted and was taken to the hospital. That was when I discovered I was pregnant. Chapter 4. A sudden sting on the back of my hand snapped me back to the present, and I saw Isan pulling out the 4 needle. He was so close that I felt flustered. I've prescribed your medicine. The instructions are inside. Come back tomorrow afternoon for the infusion, he said with calm, professional authority. Thank you, Uncle. Tomorrow I'll bring something to thank you for saving my mom. My son was as sociable as ever, maybe it was in his genes. Uncle, I'm not a kid anymore, I don't need your candy. I quickly got down from the bed, cutting off my son's chatter. terrified he might accidentally spill the family's deepest secret. Thank you for today, we'll be going now. With that, I pulled my good son along to leave. By the time we returned home, it was very late, and he had already fallen asleep in the car. Carrying him upstairs in my arms, I realized that years of being a single mother had given me surprising strength. The next morning, my fever was gone, and the dizziness had passed. At breakfast, my son looked at me with a worried expression. Mom, I dreamed about that uncle last night. His words made me laugh. What kind of kid dreams like that? Suddenly curious, I asked, what did you dream about him? Was Isan really so unforgettable to children? My son had only seen him once, yet he had already made it into his dreams. But then his little face grew even more serious, his brow furrowed. I dreamed that Uncle said he was my dad. I nearly spat out the milk I was drinking, choking as my throat burned. My dear son, do you say things like this just to send your mom straight to the afterlife? After a long moment, I finally managed. Son, you can eat anything recklessly, but words must not be spoken recklessly. That uncle is not your father. Though in truth he was. But I couldn't tell him not when I feared losing custody if the truth came out. At last, my son seemed relieved. Good thing he isn't. Otherwise, he's way too handsome. I'd be worried you'd fall in love with him. Stop focusing on your work, fail to write, and the editor would dock your pay. Then, you wouldn't have money to raise me. Once again, I was speechless, wondering if the art of sarcasm was hereditary. My son clearly had a knack for it. To prevent him from prying further about his father, I quickly changed the subject. Thankfully, he had always accepted his father's absence and rarely asked questions, which was a huge relief. Once I was nearly recovered from my cold, I naturally threw myself into finishing my manuscript. Next month's living expenses for my son and me depended entirely on it. For his sake, I could even put my procrastination aside. That day I was so caught up in writing that I completely forgot Isan had told me to come back in the afternoon for my infusion. When the phone rang, I was still half-dazed. Hello, who's calling? Honestly, I never expected it to be Isan. After all, our breakup had been so ugly I never thought he'd still have my number. He had even changed his own, so it was even less likely. In half an hour, I want to see you at the hospital. The chill in Isan's voice carried even through the phone, and it took me only a second to recognize it after all. Those years were etched deep into my memory. I didn't even react to his words at first. What am I supposed to do at the hospital? Infusion. I could clearly hear his teeth grinding. I could even feel how hard he was restraining himself from snapping at me. Only then did I remember his instructions from last night, telling me to come back this afternoon for another 4. But my fever had already gone down. I didn't need it. My fever's gone. I don't need another infusion. The truth was I didn't want to face him. The pressure was overwhelming, and I was terrified I might slip and reveal that my son was actually his son. I thought that would be the end of it, but I hadn't expected Isan to threaten me. If I don't see you in half an hour, I won't mind coming to your house to find you. His threat made me laugh at first. I thought smugly, you don't know where I live, say whatever you want. But my satisfaction lasted all of 3 seconds before it deflated. Your address was on the medical record yesterday. My face went pale, and I instantly shouted, no need. I'll be there right away. He couldn't come to my home. My son was still there, and the less they saw each other, the better. Even if they didn't look alike, blood was unpredictable. In the end, I had no choice but to drag myself back to the hospital. Before I left, my son asked, Mom, are you sure you don't want me to go with you? I nodded firmly. Absolutely sure. Mom, if you go back to the hospital and see that uncle again, and then dream that he's your dad, you'd be losing out big time becoming someone's son for free. As expected, my good son was not one to be fooled. Easily shut the door right in my face. Chapter 5. I took a taxi alone to the hospital, carefully doing my makeup beforehand to restore the dignity I'd lost so miserably the night before. Maybe deep down I just wanted to prove to my ex that I was doing perfectly fine. Damn this ridiculous pride of mine. Once I arrived, I went straight to Isan's office and explained firmly that I didn't need another infusion. Honestly, my fever's already gone. I don't need another 4. Thankfully, this time my brain managed to stop my hands from reaching for his, so he could check my forehead. Otherwise, it would have been a social death on the spot. But Isan didn't acknowledge my words at all. He shot me a sideways glance. Are you the doctor? Or am I the doctor? A direct strike from the genius himself. Couldn't I at least bargain for something? Could you shorten the time then? I'm in a hurry to get back to finishing my manuscript. I didn't want it rejected before I even finished, and more importantly, whether my son and I ate meat or vegetables next month depended entirely on this. Isan, of course, saw right through me, catching my obsession with money. His sarcastic words cut like knives. And what about the inheritance from your late husband? Already squandered it all. I froze after all. I didn't have a late husband, much less a pile of inheritance. In the end, I blurted out an excuse. Of course. You've never raised a child, have you? Kids are four-legged money-eating machines. My husband's fortune has already been devoured. Son, your mother can only use you as a shield. When we get home, I'll fry you an extra egg in gratitude for your loyal performance. Isan gave me another look before turning away to prepare the medicine, clearly unwilling to speak further. Perfect. If we kept talking, the lies I'd told would start circling the globe. He prepared the four and escorted me back to the same hospital room as yesterday. When he inserted the needle, the sting was unusually sharp. I suspected he did it on purpose, though I had no proof. Watching the medicine drip slowly down, I couldn't help thinking about how to speed it up. If you don't want your son to bury you ahead of time, don't touch it. Isan's cold voice came from beside the bed. I looked up in shock. Was he some kind of worm in my stomach? How could he guess exactly what I was thinking? Hee. I wasn't really. The air turned awkward, so I laughed weakly to cover it up. Isan didn't even glance at me. He simply turned and walked out, leaving me with nothing but the view of his retreating back. He was still the same as ever. Not even years abroad had changed him. Alone and bored, I fiddled with my phone, wanting to sleep, but my mind was wide awake, as if I'd downed 10 cups of coffee. After more than an hour, the transfusion finally finished, and I was about to be released when Isan walked in right on time to remove the needle. I was preparing to leave when a female doctor entered the room. The moment I heard her voice, I knew my luck had run out. I had run into my rival from 6 years ago. Was this hospital cursed for me? Isan, my father invited you to dinner tonight. Don't forget, Gabriella announced breezily as she stepped in. Then her gaze met mine. But she had clearly leveled up since those years, her expression perfectly natural as she greeted me. Susana, long time no see. I curled my lips slightly, unwilling to respond. After all, she was the last person I wanted to meet. The atmosphere was already suffocating, but Gabriella insisted on keeping up her facade of casual friendliness, as though this were nothing more than a light-hearted reunion. This morning Isan mentioned he'd run into you. I heard your son is already quite grown. That must be such happiness. The moment I heard those words, I knew she was trying to sow discord between Isan and me, reminding him that I already had a child, making sure he thought there could never be anything between us. It seemed she wasn't nearly as composed as she pretended. I had overestimated her restraint. If she knew that the father of my child was Isan himself, her face would turn every color under the sun. Of course, having a child is happiness. It fulfills everything. If Gabriella wanted to flaunt her joy, then I could do it too. They say if you stop caring about what others value, that's the greatest victory. Yes, I want to have a child soon as well, Gabriella replied, gazing at Isan with eyes so radiant with longing it was as if she was already handing him a baby. I had to admit I'd completely lost. 6 years had gone by, yet I was still no match for her. The frustration burned inside me. Chapter 6. Gabriella flashed me a victor smile. Isan, I won't disturb you two anymore. I'll go take care of my things. Don't forget dinner tonight. Her magnanimous tone crushed me as an ex completely. But I refused to let myself become a scapegoat between my ex and my old rival. No need. My son is waiting for me at home. Catching up isn't more important than him. Smiling, I waved and strode off in big steps, making it clear that this mother couldn't care less what they did. Just before leaving, I caught Isan's face darkening. Who told your current companion to provoke me? Paying her back in kind is my true nature. The moment I left the hospital room, my pace quickened. I wanted nothing more to do with that cursed place. It felt like the walls themselves were hexing me. But I hadn't even made it past the hospital doors before someone stopped me. "Let me take you home." Isan appeared behind me. Even though I'd been walking quickly, he still caught up with ease. His legs were long, his stride fast. I turned, staring at him, wondering what on earth was going through his mind. After the way I humiliated him during our breakup, it was a miracle he didn't want to strangle me, and now he was volunteering to drive me home? And wasn't he supposed to be having dinner with Gabriella tonight? No need. I wouldn't dare delay Dr. Lee from dining with his future in-laws. Finally, it was my turn to mock him. I even gave him a look of disdain at the end. After all, I had learned from the best. Maybe I was a genius at imitation. But oddly, my mockery seemed to improve his mood, as if he were some kind of masochist. Had all those years abroad given him strange new tastes? If so, I'd better keep my distance. Dr. Lee, I'll be on my way. Do as you please. Without thinking, I lifted my leg to dash off, but he caught me by the back of my neck. What kind of bad habit was this? I wasn't a cat, for heaven's sake. Swallowing my fury, I forced a smile. Isan, doctor, is there anything else you need? I'll take you back. With that, he lifted me up and carried me off. Was I his pet now, paraded around like a dog? I couldn't take it anymore. Isan, let me go. He turned his head, gave me a mocking glance, and pierced me with a sharp remark. So you've stopped calling me Dr. Lee? Susana, have you done so many shameful things you're afraid to face me? That line hit straight to the heart. In an instant, all my strength to resist drained away. Because the truth was, I still felt guilty. I had insulted him so cruelly during our breakup that even now insecurity gnawed at me. With no way out, I accepted my fate, and he took me to his car. Isan now drove a Mercedes. Clearly, he'd earned plenty these years. What's the matter? Regret breaking up with me back then? You didn't expect I'd earn this much money, did you? He sneered coldly, slamming the accelerator. I refused to lose face. Of course I don't regret it. The inheritance my husband left me could buy several G-Wagons. Who couldn't bluff? Isan already believed I'd squandered an inheritance, so why not flaunt it a little? But why did the car suddenly feel so icy? The temperature seemed to match Isan, subtly unstable. 20 minutes later, the car stopped in front of my building. I drove you home. Won't you invite me in for a cup of tea? I had just opened the door to slip away when Isan's voice caught me. Was something seriously wrong with him? I only wanted to get inside, focus on my manuscript, and win my war against procrastination. Why did he always have to block my way? My husband doesn't like strange men in my home. My face was filled with rejection as I pulled out my non-existent late husband as a shield once again. Your husband is dead. He remembered perfectly. When he was alive, my husband was a jealous man. If I bring you upstairs, he'll get jealous, climb out of his grave, and strangle you. My lie was delivered with all the seriousness in the world. The words didn't matter. The core message was that he was not coming upstairs. Susana, has only your age grown, and not your brain? The insult burned. I wanted to snap back with one of my own, but when I turned, I found myself staring into his deep black eyes. They locked onto me, unrelenting, until my skin crawled. A second later, I bolted. Running back home, I finally shook off Isan, that walking disaster. Joyfully, I knocked on the door, calling for my son to open up. When he did, my heart swelled with happiness at seeing his little face again. Only his expression was odd. He frowned, looking past me with tears threatening in his eyes. Mom, I saw that uncle again. Is he going to come into my dreams tonight and be my dad, taking advantage of me? Chapter 7. My son's words terrified me. He wasn't feverish, yet he was spouting nonsense. Seeing ghosts in broad daylight was never a good sign. Suspicious, I followed his gaze behind me. And sure enough, there was Isan, walking straight toward my home. My smile froze solid on my face. Did he really come up with me just for a cup of tea? What did you dream about? Isan asked, standing at the door, leaning down to speak to my son over my shoulder. The mention of the dream made me instantly panic. I shoved my son inside, desperate to keep them apart. The most important thing was preventing him from blurting out something outrageous. No dreams, hee hee. Kids don't dream. I spoke with all seriousness. But just as I finished, my good son softly betrayed me. Mom, I do dream. No, you don't dream. I rushed to cut him off. This boy was too talkative in front of his father. At this rate, he might even start listing how many pairs of underwear he owned. I shot him a pleading look, signaling that tonight we needed all the mother-son telepathy we had. But in the end, I'd miscalculated. Mom, is your eye twitching? Let Uncle Doctor take a look quickly. My good son always, so concerned for me. An eye twitch. Isan suddenly leaned in close, startling me so much I froze, my limbs refusing to move. I'll take the trouble of checking for you. Don't worry, I won't charge. It'll be a free consultation. His body leaned closer and closer. My eyes hadn't been twitching before, but now from sheer nerves they were about to start. Could he not come so near? Seeing him almost touch my nose, I shuddered and raised my hand to push him away. Hee, I don't smoke anymore, so I'm not wasting medical resources.
Dr.
Lee, I made it home safely. Please head back, and thank you for bringing me. I forced a fake smile as I slipped inside, silently cursing that if he didn't leave soon, I'd start swearing at him in my head. But Isan ignored me and turned to chat with my son. Kid, I brought your mom home safely. Shouldn't you invite me in for a cup of tea? The thoughtful look on my son's face made my stomach sink. I knew I was in trouble. Sure enough, the next second he looked at me solemnly. Mom, the teacher said we must always be grateful. Let's invite Uncle in to thank him. Isan, I really ought to thank you, shouldn't I? My son clearly has a high IQ, but in front of his father he seems to lose all brain power. But am I someone who gives up so easily? Martin, Uncle is still working. We can't interrupt his duty of saving lives. I'm not working today. Isan, would it kill you not to contradict me? Can't you see I don't want you here? Then what are you doing at the hospital today? I nearly ground my teeth to dust forcing that line out. I was bored at home, so I came to help. Of course you weren't bored, you came looking for trouble with your ex. Obviously, you've eaten too much. In that case, Dr. Lee, please come in and have a cup of tea to digest it. It seemed he was determined to drink that tea today. Fine, let him drink it quickly and leave. He walked into my house without the slightest shame, slipping off his shoes at the door. Shoes. There aren't any men's slippers here. You'll have to make do barefoot. Actually, there were a pair my father left behind, but I wasn't about to let him use them. For some reason, instead of being annoyed, he smiled, was positively cheerful walking around barefoot. Once inside, his eyes roamed everywhere. If he hadn't come through the front door, I'd think he was here to rob the place. Martin, take Uncle to the sofa. Mommy will go make tea. We'd already met twice now, and Isan hadn't noticed anything. Maybe he had no idea my son was his. That thought relaxed me as I headed to the kitchen. When I came out with the tea, the two of them were chatting happily. Why isn't there anything of your dad's in the house? Mom says she's afraid the things will remind her of him, so she put them all away. My mom loves my dad very much. I've even seen her cry in secret. My good son, those words wiped the color right off Isan's face.
Perfect.
He thought he'd come here to torment me? No chance. Chapter 8. Yes, the child's father and I were very affectionate before his death. Every time I think of him, I feel so sad. That's why I put away all his belongings. I played along, fully cooperating. Apart from the little detail that Isan isn't actually dead, everything else was true enough. The first 2 years after our breakup, I really did cry whenever I saw his photo, and holding my son in my arms brought me to tears almost daily. Dr. Isan, have some tea.
This was also left by my husband before he passed.
There's not much left. You're lucky to have a cup. I laughed lightly as I placed the cup before him, wearing an expression of sincerity. I was very good at landing the final blow. Isan's face darkened visibly, his hand tightening as though he'd rather shatter the teacup or perhaps me. But I pretended not to notice and pushed further. Doctor, please drink the tea. Uncle, drink it. The tea Mom made is really good. Under both our gazes, Isan lifted the cup and drained it in one gulp. Thank goodness I had let it cool a bit, otherwise drinking it all at once would have blistered his mouth. Isan set the cup down with a grim face and stood abruptly. I've got things to do. I'm leaving. Oh, so soon? Exactly what I wanted. All right then, Dr. Lee. Take care, I won't see you out. I waved him off enthusiastically, nearly grinning ear to ear, though I forced myself to hold it in. At the door, I couldn't resist adding, "Don't be late to dinner with your in-laws." I truly meant it kindly, but Isan gave me a strange look before leaving. Just that one look haunted me for days, leaving me sleepless. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that half-smiling expression. It was maddening. Still, there was a silver lining. Since I couldn't sleep, I got up and wrote. To everyone's shock, including my editor, I finished the manuscript early, well before the end of the month. She said it was like the sun had risen in the west. I thought that after this accidental run-in with Isan, I wouldn't see him again. I didn't seek out news of him either. By now, he and Gabriella were probably on the verge of marriage. Once the month ended, my life returned to its usual lazy rhythm. My son, however, resumed his relentless nagging. "Mom, if you don't right now, at the end of the month Annie editor will come chasing you again." "Son, how about we stop watching Journey to the West?" "My good song Cold you have learned from Sun Wukong instead of Tangsing, the monk who never stops chanting?" Suddenly the doorbell rang, and I wondered who could be visiting at this hour. I got up to open it, and the moment I did, I saw Isan standing there. "Why are you here again?" I hadn't even finished speaking when he brushed past me, stepping inside as if it were his own home, slipping off his shoes and putting on another pair with movements so natural and familiar that I almost thought he lived here. Did he really think this was his house? "Wow, hello Uncle Doctor, you came?" My son looked at Isan in surprise. Was there some kind of telepathic bond between father and son? The two of them clasped hands and went straight to the sofa, completely ignoring me. "Hey, last I checked, wasn't I the owner of this house?" Watching Isan make himself at home, my anger flared, and I stormed over. "Isan, what the hell are you doing?" He lifted his head, eyes bloodshot with fatigue, and said simply, "Susana, I'm so tired." Just that one phrase left me speechless. 6 years had passed, 6 years without hearing him call me, then suddenly, memories buried deep in my mind burst to the surface. Scenes from our university days played in my head, him calling my name over and over, gently, tenderly. My throat tightened, and I muttered at random, "Do as you like." Then I fled back to my room. Exactly that, fled. If I stayed longer, I was afraid I'd start crying. I leaned back against the headboard, drained from the whirlwind of recent days.
Isan.
What are you planning? Chapter 9. It was a long while before I heard footsteps at the door. Without looking, I already knew it was my son. Sure enough, a few seconds later, he ran in and leapt straight into my arms. "Mom, why aren't you playing?" I pinched his chubby cheeks. Watching how happy he'd been playing with his father, I wouldn't admit that I was a little jealous. Uncle fell asleep. I froze for a moment, then left him to play on his own while I went to take a look. In the living room, Isan was stretched out on the sofa, fast asleep, though his brow was furrowed as if he were troubled. I thought to myself, with a thriving career and a powerful future father-in-law, he already has a double victory. What more could he want? I hadn't intended to do anything, but in the end, I softened. Quietly, I laid a blanket over him, though I left his face uncovered, mainly out of fear he might suffocate and my house turn into a crime scene, which would be far from ideal. Returning to the bedroom, my son once again curled up in my arms. Seeing his little face clouded with confusion, I knew something was weighing on him. "Son, do you have something you want to tell Mommy?" A mother's intuition was never wrong. As soon as I asked, he started speaking nonstop. "Mom, I think that uncle looks like my dad." My face almost cracked in two. What did my good son just say? How did he figure it out? And could I take my question back? Why did I have to be so reckless as to ask? Following the principle of seeking truth, I asked tentatively, "Son, why do you think that?" Holding his small head in one hand, he answered seriously, a man's sixth sense. "I just feel like he's my dad." My entire face filled with black lines. "Son, are you really trying to kill your young mother with embarrassment?" A brat having a sixth sense. And though his instinct was right, as his mom, I had to mercilessly crush it in its cradle. "Son, your perception is wrong. You just wish you had a dad." I spoke firmly, the lie sliding off my tongue with ease after all these years. He looked at me, pursed his lips, and finally accepted my explanation. All right. Relieved, I was just about to celebrate my victory when he dropped another bomb. Mom, Grandpa says you need to go back to the village for a blind date. If you keep being a spinster, you'll embarrass him. Black lines covered my forehead again. What on earth had my father been teaching him? Fortunately, my son was still young, easily distracted, and with a few words I shifted his focus. Soon he tired from playing and fell asleep in my arms. One sleeping inside, one asleep outside, the atmosphere was so calm it felt almost wrong not to nap myself. When I woke up and walked back to the living room, the sofa was neatly folded with blankets. Isan was gone. For a moment, I felt a pang of disappointment. Realizing it, I scolded myself for letting such foolish thoughts creep in. Just then, I noticed a message on my phone. Something came up at the hospital. I left first. It didn't take a genius to know it was from Isan. I didn't reply, letting it fade into the void. I thought that would be the end of it, but the next few days brought a stream of his messages, so many, they felt like harassment. The strangest part was the content, making me wonder if someone had stolen his phone. It's going to rain today. Remember to bring an umbrella when you pick up Martin from school. It's been hot lately. You and Martin should drink more water. In summer, bitter melon helps cool the body. Buy some next time you shop. On and on they came. I couldn't help but wonder, when had Isan become so fussy? Was there something in the water overseas that feminized him? In the end, I never replied. I had no idea what to say, so I let him chatter to himself. Chapter 10. One afternoon, a few days later, I was so absorbed in discussing an outline with my editor that by the time we finished, I had already missed the time to pick up my son from school. So nervous was I that I ran out of the house in nothing but slippers. I had raised my son alone, and though I was usually carefree, in crucial moments my nerves always betrayed me, fearing some accident would happen. When I reached the kindergarten gate, the scene before me nearly blinded me. Isan was there holding my son in his arms. In an instant, 100 thoughts raced through my head. Had he discovered the truth? Was he here to fight for custody? Could I even win if it came to that? And worst of all, would my son choose to stay with him instead of me? Terrified by my own thoughts, the next second I charged forward. Isan, let go of my son. If you dare take him, I'll fight you to the very end. My voice cracked like thunder on a clear day, startling even a woman nearby who looked at Isan nervously, as though wondering if he were a child trafficker. Yet my son, instead of cooperating with his mom, turned to me with sparkling eyes. Mom, Uncle said he's taking me to the amusement park. Let's go quickly. Just like that, Isan was vindicated. Watching him walk ahead with my son, the two clinging together like inseparables, I wanted nothing more than to march over and tear them apart. My brows knitted tight, I followed behind, refusing to admit I was jealous. Why was my son so close to him? Seeing me dawdle, Isan stopped, turned and called out, "Susana, hurry up." His smile lingered, dangerously charming. That shameless man. He was weaponizing his looks against me, and I was helplessly falling for it. How could it be that after all these years, I still had no immunity to his allure? We drove straight to the amusement park in Isan's car. My son was already bubbling with excitement before we even got out, and after Isan accompanied him on every single ride, his joy only multiplied. I stood outside the fence, watching as Isan carried my boy through the bumper cars. Seeing them laugh so happily filled me with warmth and also a quiet ache. A child without a father's presence, his childhood really was different. That mysterious, irreplaceable fatherly love, I could never provide it, no matter how hard I tried. Mom, Uncle is amazing. He made everyone else move aside. My son came running to me afterward, holding Isan's hand proudly, his little face lit with joy and his mouth chattering nonstop. Uncle even went with me into the haunted house. Mom, you wouldn't dare take me there. Mom, next time let's come again with Uncle. I had never realized until today that my son could chatter more noisily than 100,000 ducks. Finally, after playing himself to exhaustion, he fell asleep, giving my poor ears a moment's peace. When the car pulled up to my building, I reached to carry my son upstairs, but before I could, Isan had already scooped him into his arms. Looking at my empty hands, I was so annoyed I wanted to snatch him back, but with his long legs and tall frame, I couldn't catch up. Back inside, my heart in chaos like the sea, I sat on the sofa, determined to finally confront Isan. The moment he stepped out of my son's room, I barked, "Isan, what the hell are you doing?" Chapter 11. He didn't rush to answer. Instead, he pulled my son's little stool over and sat down right in front of me. If the tension hadn't been so thick, I might have mocked him. "Do you realize how huge you are? If you break my son's stool, will you pay for it? Tell me, what exactly do you want? If you're not prowling around my house, you're taking off with my son. What the hell are you up to?" I crossed my arms and glared at him, my accent almost breaking into Chongqing dialect. Suddenly, he stood, bracing his hands on the coffee table, leaning down until his face was level with mine. His eyes locked on me, and his voice dipped, deliberately magnetic. "Susana, don't you understand what I mean?" His sudden flirtation sent heat flooding to my ears. You don't come any closer," I stammered, backing away, utterly undone. Damn his infernal charm, when would I ever be immune? "Susana, I want to be Martin's stepfather." Uffed. I nearly toppled off the sofa at his words. What the hell? Be my son's stepfather? Of course, he didn't know he was the real father, but still, what kind of thought process led him to say something like that? I stared at him, wide-eyed, looking him up and down, then finally blurted, "Isan, did you hit your head today?" For someone so arrogant, why would he lower himself to being someone's stepdad? I saw him hesitate, then steady himself before replying. "You lost your husband. Martin lost his father. I'm single. Together, we can be a family. I'm not joking, Susana. I mean it. Think about it." After he left, I sat on the sofa reflecting on life, and no matter how much I thought, I couldn't understand why Isan would step down from his pedestal like this. It didn't fit his character at all. Soon my son woke from his nap, shuffling out barefoot, rubbing his sleepy eyes. "Mom, where's Uncle?" Really? The first thing he did after waking was ask for Isan? Was I, his mother, worth so little in his heart? "Son, come here. Mom has a question." "What is it?" My good son perked up instantly, looking at me with grave seriousness. "Son, why do you like Uncle so much?" I had been wrestling with this question for days. He had only seen Isan a few to meso. Why did he like him so much? Was it truly the pull of blood? My son climbed into my lap and answered with complete earnestness. "Uncle feels like a dad. The kids at kindergarten say their dads take them to play. Uncle also takes me to play. He keeps me company, like a dad. I really like him. Mom, next time don't let Uncle sleep on the sofa." That looks so pitiful. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry at his words. He even knew that sleeping on the sofa was pitiful. Looking at my son's innocent little face, I thought about what Isan had said about becoming Martin's stepfather, and for the first time, I began seriously considering it. No matter if it was Isan or not, maybe Martin really should have a father. Some truths can't be denied. Growing up without a dad leaves gaps in life and in thought, and as his mother, I couldn't afford to be selfish. I had always believed I could raise him well on my own, but deep down I knew it wasn't enough. What would you think if Uncle became your dad? Chapter 12. When I asked that question, my son lit up so brightly, he nearly leapt with joy. He really did like Isan. The saying that fathers and sons are connected by blood wasn't wrong. After that, Isan started coming over often to spend time with Martin, and each time he came, he brought bags of food or piles of toys completely, like a bootlicker currying favor. I couldn't deny it. The brain of a genius really was useful. He knew my son was my weak point, so to win me over, he began with him. Of course, he was also very good to me, helping with the laundry, cooking meals, almost taking on all the housework. If it weren't for his job, I suspected he'd be on call for us at any time. It was thanks to his persistence that I finally confirmed he and Gabriella weren't together. It seemed Gabriella's level wasn't very high after all chasing Isan for so many years and still failing. But speaking behind people's backs is never good. Just as I thought of her, Gabriella appeared. "Susana, you've been separated for 6 years. A broken mirror can't be made whole again. Why keep clinging to Isan?" She invited me to coffee, and as soon as I sat down, she launched her attack. But her words didn't sit right with May wasn't going to shoulder that blame. He's the one chasing after me. Why don't you do us all a favor and tell him to stop trying to be my son's stepdad? Gabriella's face collapsed in an instant, her proud smile freezing before it could fade. She'd wanted to lecture me, but instead she had to face the fact that Hassan would rather be a stepfather than be with her. The humiliation must have stung. I calmly sipped my coffee, waiting to see what move she'd make next. Susana, if I could make you leave Hassan back then, I can do it again now. Hee. Why don't you tell me your methods, so I can decide whether I should be afraid? I rolled my eyes openly. Did she really think what worked years ago would work now? Did she think that because she hadn't made progress in 6 years, I hadn't either? Back then you broke up with Hassan for his chance to study abroad. Aren't you worried about his future now? I'll tell you clearly, as long as you stop clinging to him, he'll marry me, and my father will guarantee his promotion at the hospital. Gabriella's confidence came from her father's influence. Having a skilled father really was an advantage. I thought of my own fat hair at best. He was still out walking his birds every morning. Hassan's promotion has nothing to do with me. Threatening me with that is pointless. Gabriella, it's been 6 years. Couldn't you at least change your tactics? Even if you don't get tired, I already am. I drained the last of my coffee, stood, and prepared to leave. It was nearly time to pick up my son from school, and I had no patience to waste more expressions on Gabriella. The only joy today was the air conditioning and a cup of coffee, but next time I'd skip it. Watching Gabriella drink made me worry about her digestion. She must have been furious, because just as I stood, Gabriella shouted, "Susana, don't you care about Hassan's future?" And right on cue, Hassan appeared at my side. My future doesn't need anyone's concern, least of all yours, Gabriella. Stay out of what doesn't concern you. Hassan's way of cutting people down was a sight I always enjoyed, but why was his hand on my waist? Did I give him permission? He'd better be careful, or I'd slice it off. Hassan, I'm doing this for your own good. You know how much my father values you. Gabriella's expression shifted so fast it was like watching Sichuan opera masks change. Gabriella, I'll say this once more. My life, my future, they need none of your input. We have nothing between us. As for the professor, I'll thank him myself. With that, he grabbed me and pulled me away. I hadn't even processed what had just happened. Was the show already over? Still, I took a good look at Gabriella's expression before leaving. It was worse than crying. After chasing this man for so many years, all she got was him saying there was nothing between them. Her heart must have shattered. Honestly, it was a pity. And yes, I admit I enjoyed her misery. Holding grudges is one of my cherished traditions. Chapter 13. Hassan gripped me tightly, his face dark with fury. Today he was as angry as the day we broke up, though I couldn't fathom why. Was he always this moody, this incapable of controlling his emotions? He dragged me straight to the parking lot, opened his car door, and shoved me inside. Hassan, what are you doing? Since when was it polite to haul me around without asking? The truth was, I had no right to refuse. Locked the car doors, and I couldn't exactly jump out at that speed. The way he was driving for the sake of my life and seeing my son grow up, I lost my nerve and stayed put. The whole way, no matter what I said, Hassan ignored me. Finally, the car pulled into a building, and I looked up at the landmark. Wow, a mansion. Son, did you know? Your father is very rich. Of course, he'd always been proud. He never accepted so much as a needle or a thread from his patients' families. Everything he had, he earned with his own skill. Before I could admire the luxurious parking garage, he dragged me into the elevator and straight up to his home. From start to finish, I'd already given up resisting. Since I was here, I might as well treat it like a country girl visiting the city, taking in the sights as best I could. Yet Hassan was clearly holding something back, refusing to let me even enjoy a moment of admiration. Susana. Ah, finally you speak. I saw you holding it in the whole way. Must have been suffocating, I said, lounging casually on the sofa, pretending to joke, though inside I was a bundle of nerves. With that hungry look in his eyes, was he planning to devour me? Or worse, kill me and keep the child for himself? He took several deep breaths. 6 years ago, you broke up with me. Was it because Gabriella threatened you with my study abroad placement? Though he phrased it as a question, his tone was full of certainty. Oh no. He'd overheard the cafe conversation. But I was stubborn. I wasn't about to admit I'd been foolish enough to sacrifice myself back then. Impossible. What I really wanted was to find a rich man. He shot back. Then look at where I live now, the car I drive, the savings I have. Don't I look like a rich man? Come be with me. With that, he shoved a bank card right in front of me. I froze, utterly bewildered. Should I keep up my greedy act or just let it collapse completely? Isan sat beside me with a sigh, gripping my shoulders with both hands in that commanding, boss-like posture that annoyingly I found extremely attractive. Was he trying to distract me again? What exactly was he playing at? Susana, I already know the truth from back then.
Gabriela lied.
The study abroad placement was public and transparent. I earned it through my own merit. No one could have manipulated it. If you'd studied a little harder, you wouldn't have been tricked so easily. Hearing that truth left me dumbstruck. I sat there stunned for a long time. So Gabriela fooled me. And I believe her lies. Worked myself up and acted like some melodramatic heroine breaking up for my boyfriend's future, raising my son alone. Was this not the script of a cliché romance novel? Should I congratulate myself on being the tragic female lead? Susana, are you okay? Isan grew worried because I'd gone silent so long. I lifted my head, pouting, on the verge of tears. I just want to be alone. Today I learned I have a low IQ and honestly, I'm pretty upset about it. With a helpless sigh, Isan pulled me into his arms, his expression softer than at any time since our reunion. Susana, let's get back together. We've already lost 6 years, let's not lose more. A genius really was a genius. Even his love confession sounded unbearably charming. And though his persistence these days had moved me, though, I had been the one to make the wrong decision back then, though the child was his, as well, I couldn't bring myself to agree so easily. I'll go home and ask my son if he wants you as his stepfather. Chapter 14. That was a mistake. Because the moment I said it, he dragged me to find my son and immediately asked him if he wanted Isan to be his stepdad. My son answered with unrestrained excitement, not even thinking twice. From then on, Isan stopped caring about whether I agreed or not, slipped into my house every other day until eventually he became a permanent resident. Since my son adored him, I chose to turn a blind eye. But Isan didn't just covet my sons. Beth also wanted to share the big bed with me. What a wonderful idea he had. Still, I've kept one truth hidden from my son, that Isan is his biological father. Mainly because I missed the best time to tell him, and now I don't know how to bring it up. So I chose the ostrich strategy, hide my head and pretend it's fine. In the end, it was my father who exposed everything. One afternoon, the 3 of us were sitting on the sofa watching TV, when suddenly the door swung open. We all turned at once to see my dad walk in carrying a pile of things. My first reaction, we're doomed. Of course, Isan was about to discover that I'd used my father to deceive him. As expected, Isan's gaze immediately landed on me, sharp and questioning, as if to say, so this is the big patron you've been hiding? Really? A powerful benefactor? In the awkward silence, it was my son who broke the ice. Grandpa, I missed you so much. He leapt straight into my father's arms, while I kept my head bowed, not daring to meet Isan's eyes. Isan leaned close to my ear, whispering with a sly smile, so the big backer who supported you all along was your dad. Hee. Meanwhile, my father was already criticizing me. My dear grandson, you're still the sweetest. Look at your mother, won't even get up from the sofa. Ever since I had my child, I was no longer his pampered little girl. After hugging his grandson, he finally noticed Isan sitting there.
Oh.
So you've finally found Martin a stepfather. He plopped down excitedly and began scrutinizing Isan. Isan sat upright, polite as if meeting a father-in-law. Hello, sir. But my dad wasn't so easily impressed. Just when I thought he was satisfied, he dropped a bomb like thunder. Why does he look so familiar? Isn't this the so-called dead father of Martin you told me about? At once, 3 pairs of eyes turned toward me, especially Isan's, whose glare nearly pierced my soul. Hee. Laughter is healthy, right? I chuckled awkwardly, praying for rescue. Mom, stop laughing and be honest. In the end, I had no choice but to reveal that Hassan was indeed Martin's biological father. And I watched Hassan's eyes fill with emotion until he nearly cried on the spot. The atmosphere had been building for so long that even I felt like crying. As for how my father knew the truth, it was because he'd seen the photo. When I came home pregnant, my father, ever obsessed with looks, said I could keep the child and he would raise him, but he worried the baby wouldn't inherit good genes and might not be handsome. No matter how many times I tried to convince him, he wouldn't believe me. In the end, I had no choice but to show him Hassan's photo and tell him Hassan had already passed away. My father took one look at the child's father, decided he was handsome with good genes, and immediately felt reassured. Under the hopeful eyes of the entire family, my son was born. As I recalled those memories, the three of them were now happily chatting together, and it was true, just as the saying goes, the more a father-in-law looks at a son-in-law, the more he likes him. Just as I thought everything had been resolved perfectly, Hassan suddenly lifted me up and carried me straight into the bedroom. Hey, Hassan, what are you doing? If you have something to say, let's talk it out properly. I want to talk about how Martin's biological father supposedly died, and then you asked me to be the stepfather of my own biological son. It was all just a misunderstanding. I barely finished speaking before the bedroom door slammed shut, and neither my father nor my son came to save Methy, were still too caught up in their lively conversation. Grandpa, where did Mom and Dad go? They went to make you a little sister. You've always wanted one, and now your wish is about to come true. Well, I was clearly on my own. Watching Hassan draw closer and closer, I pretended to stay calm. Surprise. I've gifted you a 5-year-old son. Shocked? Unexpected. What I got in return was a fierce, passionate kiss laced with a hint of revenge. Finally, with his face buried in my neck, Hassan's voice came out low and husky. Susana, I really like this surprise.